So there was a bunch of drama over the weekend, and actually you can safely say over all of last week, about the stimulus bill. So Jeff Stein lays out for us a potential deal that was on the table. He says the deal Congress may reject would give $400 a week to 20 plus million unemployed people, $4,400 to tens of millions of families, many suffering pay cuts. That would be everybody making under $150,000, by the way. Airline, restaurant, hotel workers a shot to hold on. $300 billion to struggling local governments. So, this is a deal that was on the table. It was on the table. It's a $1.8 trillion stimulus bill. And really, it's a lifeline at a time of complete and utter desperation. Now, this was ironed out. I believe Steve Mnuchin was one of the head guys in the negotiations, in the talks. Trump was actually on board. He's been flip-flopping like a fish fresh out of water. I mean, he was, I'm ordering Congress to shut down negotiations with Nancy Pelosi. Now, not only do I want a stimulus, I want an even bigger stimulus than what the Democrats want. These are all things he said at different times. He's gone back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. When he shut down the negotiations on the stimulus, the market plummeted, and then he was feeling pressure from, across the board. Virtually every outlet was dunking on him, and then he was like, okay, no. See, what happened was, the sun was in my eyes, and what I meant when I said that the negotiations are shut down is the negotiations are back on and get something on my desk now. Okay, so he's been all over the place. Now, this deal was on the table. Nancy Pelosi said, no deal. She said the, quote, heart of the matter is that Trump's administration's refusal to adopt national coronavirus testing and tracing plan is a non-starter. So she was saying, listen, I understand people need money. The deal's on the table. However, since your deal doesn't include anything on coronavirus testing and tracing, we're done here. She also cited the liability shield, which is, basically the idea of the liability shield is businesses want protection from lawsuits that if somebody gets COVID, while they're in business X, that it's on them, it's not on the business. And so there were some liability shield protections for corporations apparently in this deal, and Nancy Pelosi says, oh, no, we can't. I'm not going to make a deal because I don't want that in there. Now, the other thing is Senate Republicans, there were mumbles behind the scenes that even if Nancy Pelosi said, you got a deal, $1.8 trillion, lifeline, money to families that need it, that Senate Republicans would be like, we're against it. We're against this. Why? They're Senate Republicans. And, they always do, whenever it's money for regular people, they love to do the thing where they're like, oh, how are we going to pay for it? Oh my God, the debt. Oh my God, the deficit. Oh my God, this is insane. You're giving away free money, blah, blah, blah. And, you would have seen the more Tea Party-esque roots of the Republican Party come out if Nancy Pelosi called their bluff. Now, in the case of Mnuchin's a Wall Street guy. He understands that, you actually need a giant stimulus bill to avoid, a depression, which would also hurt his buddies on Wall Street. So he's actually now on the side of a stimulus. And you have Trump, and this gets to the main point, guys. Trump, because he wants to get reelected and he knows this is his only shot at getting reelected, he's now totally on board with, a stimulus bill as well. And Nancy Pelosi, even though you should be ready to do a stimulus bill right now, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, regardless of what they say and regardless of what issues they cherry pick to say this is why we're not going to agree, the reality is it's political. And Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats don't want to do a single thing that might change those polls coming into election day. Listen, that's the truth. That's the reason why she's really hesitating and basically saying no deal, is because she thinks, well, if Trump gets this stimulus done and the checks go out, the checks might not even get out there until after the election. But if you cut this deal, you give Trump something to brag about, you give people a lifeline, then they might actually say, we prefer Trump and we prefer the status quo. Because people need, material well-being. And if the government is providing that material well-being, then yeah, a lot of the other noise becomes nonsense and people vote based on their wallet. Now, what should be done? Listen, I would take the deal. I would take this deal. Whatever things are in there that are issues, it's a bullet that you can and should bite to help families who desperately need it. This is way past due anyway. People literally can't pay the bills. So you got to get the money to them. Now, another thing that they could do, which they won't do, but if I was Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, I would say, I would call their bluff and accept this deal and then let the Senate Republicans slap it down and point the finger at them. But beyond that, you could just pass a standalone, clean stimulus bill. So a standalone, clean, universal basic income bill for the rest of the crisis. So, and whatever number you want, $1,200, $600 every month, no strings attached for the rest of the crisis for everybody in the country. Or you could say the below $150,000 and below. Okay, I would do it for everybody, but let's say you got some disagreement within the caucus. Okay, fine. $1,200 or $1,600 for the remainder of the crisis for everybody below $150,000. Pass that bill, clean, standalone, no other nonsense attached to it that you could argue over until the cows come home. Pass that, and then you blitz the media, and you have all the Democrats go on all the Sunday shows, talk to CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whoever will listen, and you scream, we just passed the bill. You need to do it. You need to sign on to this. You need to get the Republicans on board. The Republicans are blocking this. This is the relief for you. Now, there was the CARES Act and then the HEROES Act. Like, they have passed bills through the House that are somewhat similar, but there's a little too much going on in there, and it's not politically intelligent enough to land with the same punch. And so if you pass just a clean stimulus bill, all the other stuff goes away, then I do think that politically that would be advantageous for the Democrats. And it would also put a lot of pressure on the Republicans to, do something and to try to portray themselves as serious and not the bad guy. But now, what's happening with Nancy Pelosi, it's very easy to point to her and say, this is her and it's all political. And the reason she's not doing it is because she doesn't want to change the polls in regards to Joe Biden versus Trump. So they really are putting politics over policy, and they don't care how much people are hurting. And there's only been one Democrat so far that I've seen. Now, maybe it's changed since, in the time between the recording of this and the releasing of this, but I've seen Ro Khanna said, no, take the deal. People need the money. This is not time to mess around. We got to do what we got to do. That only from Ro Khanna did I hear that. I didn't hear anything from AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Raul Grajava, Mark Pocan, Tulsi Gabbard, fill in the blank. Nobody said, other than Ro Khanna, you should take this deal. And, that really is crazy how, honestly, we have a stimulus bill here that is desperately needed. It's really not that bad in terms of the substance of it. And Pelosi saying no, and the Democrats are all falling in line behind Pelosi. Look how easy it is for this corporatist leader of the Democrats to make everybody fall in line and do the political thing and not the correct thing. And that's depressing and that's upsetting. And by the way, guys, just so you know, even if the Democrats sign on to this, I don't even think they're correct in thinking, hey, if you sign on to this, Trump is going to win the election. You might get a 2 or 3 point swing in Trump's direction nationally, but I still think Biden has enough of a cushion and a big enough lead that he would still win. So in other words, the thing that I think is the primary concern for Nancy is not even true. It's not accurate. Like, you should do this to help the American people, even if it did really help Trump. But it's not even going to really help Trump. It might help him a little bit, or it might help him not at all. Biden's lead is big enough. And like I said, a lot of the checks would probably not get out until after November 3rd anyway. I mean, this is crazy, guys. This is crazy. Take the deal. Take the deal. But now, since, the Democrats basically said no, then now the Republicans are shifting their rhetoric as well, and now they're focusing more on the courts. By the way, Mitch McConnell is kind of screwing Trump as well, because Mitch McConnell, really, he wants his legacy to be, I packed all the courts with insane far-right people, and so any piece of left-wing legislation, populist legislation, that gets through for decades is immediately going to be slapped down by the courts. In other words, let's give right-wing ideologues veto power on anything Democrats or the left want to do for the next few decades. That's what Mitch McConnell wants as his legacy. He doesn't care about the stimulus checks. He doesn't care about the American people and how they're struggling financially. He wants to cement a right-wing ideology in the country, and the way to do that is to pack the courts. He's effectively already done that, but now with Amy Coney Barrett, that's the cherry on top. That's, 6-3 conservative court. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. So McConnell's been telling Trump, if we do the stimulus, it's gonna take all the attention away from where it needs to be, which is the Supreme Court nomination. So don't do the stimulus. Let's focus on the Supreme Court nomination. And Trump's a moron. He doesn't realize that actually would hurt him more to focus just on that. But, he listens to whoever the last person is in the room because he's not that bright. And so McConnell got his ear, and Trump is now going right along with that, which is only going to hurt him more in the election. So this is not good, man. Washington is fundamentally broken, and I don't even think the Democrats are going to be able to block Amy Waffle Coney Island Barrett. It's not going to happen. So this is a really, really bad moment. It's a bad moment for the American people. It's a bad moment for the Democrats. It's a bad moment for a potential future left-wing movement. And we got to acknowledge the reality. It's a crime that there isn't a stimulus that already happened. It's a crime. But here we are. And it looks like there probably will be no stimulus deal until after the election, if at all. And that means you're going to have a colossal wave of evictions, foreclosures, homelessness, suicide, desperation, despair, all of that stuff. And in DC, they simply do not care.